Writing linear equations. So by the time we're done with this section, we should be able to be given certain information and write an equation and put it in the form that it's asking for. So to start with, when we are talking about linear equations, there are three forms that we need to discuss. So the first one is our slope-intercept form, which is the one we are most familiar with. That is the y equals mx plus b. Or if we're in function notation, then we would write it as f of x equals mx plus b. Okay. But the m is our slope, b is the y-intercept. Okay. Now, when we are in this form, we tend to graph. We can use this form to identify, again, our slope and our y-intercept. And then sometimes we can use this equation to write an equation, but we can only do that if we know both the slope and the y-intercept. If we do not know those two pieces of information, we cannot start in this form to write an equation. So most of the time we will not be starting in this form, we will rearrange to it. So anytime you're asked to put something into slope-intercept form as your final answer, the y has to be by itself. Okay, so we would solve the equation for y to put it into slope-intercept. And it's completely okay if both your slope and your y-intercept is a fraction in this form. Okay. The next form that we're going to talk about is standard form. So this one looks like ax plus by equals c. So for this form, we're never going to start in this form when we are writing equations from points and lines. So we will always rearrange to this form. So for something to be considered standard form, your x and y have to be on the same side. The number with your x, so that a value, has to be positive. And then none of these numbers can have fractions. Now, if we're in standard form, we're probably going to be using this form to find x and y intercepts. Okay? And again, we are never starting in this form when we are writing equations. We will rearrange to be in this form. Okay. And then the last form is our point slope form. So this is the y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay? So m is our slope, and then the x1, y1 is a point. So that means that in this equation, we would replace the m, the x1, and the y1 with numbers, and then the y and x without that one with it stays in the equation. So this is what we use to write equations. Okay, so anytime you're asked to write an equation, we're going to be starting in point-slope form, and then we would rearrange to either slope-intercept or standard form, depending on what the question is asking. Okay, and we're never going to rearrange to this form, so we use point-slope to start in when we write equations. And again, just as a reminder for our slope formula, that is when we are given 2 points, so y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then for an x-intercept, as a point, remember we're going to have some number, and then the y value is 0. And for the y-intercept, we would have 0 for the x, and wherever it's crossing the y-axis for that.